Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Kung Fu. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, I love that Henry didn't show up at, he didn't really get an invite to the Shin family dinner, but I love that, Jilan did, but she didn't want to go, and she's like, oh, this is kind of awkward, and it's like, oh, they're kind of having to collaborate together, so it's like I'm sure you probably have your reservations about ringing around Nikki's family, because Paylene got invited, but it's still the awkward thing of like, yeah, you're the woman that kind of came after our daughter at one point in time, and things were kind of pretty bad, so it's like, we have our reservations probably about you being around our daughter again too, but, you know, you guys have kind of squashed your issues, so maybe they're fine with it too, but either way, the fact is, I love that you had Bo showing up there, and when he saw Paling, he was shocked, because that's the thing. When we met the Zhao last season, she looked like Paling, but that might have just been on purpose. I don't know what the form she has when she was inside of Paling's cage, that form we've seen. I don't know if that's what she really, really looked like back in the day, or she taking on a form that is more suitable to get Bo to do what she wants to do. Because we still walked away from this episode not fully knowing what their dynamic and their circumstances are. Whether it is like, how long has she been whispering to Bo? Has it been for years? Like, you know, because it could be an interesting thing that maybe she's been a part of his life forever. She's always had the power like the Trevors, and once again, we know she can get inside of people's heads, like she got in Nikki's head, she got in Jilan's head, so it's not that wild to sit, you know, maybe this is always a backup plan, or maybe it's only because he showed up post-earthquake, so it's unclear what the timetable is for stuff, like why he ended up showing up, and he did reference, because she told him to get close to Nikki, but he didn't know it would be for the purpose of they be on opposite sides, he thought they'd be in it together, so it's like, throughout this episode, that's why I'm like, I'm not sure because that's the big thing too. What does he know about Zhao? Like, obviously, she's his Shifu and everything, but that's why I'm like, I don't know whether I guess because he knew that Paling was going to be her body, so seeing Paling at dinner and stuff being like, wait, this is your body? Wait, this is Nikki's Shifu? Wait, the Shifu that was dead? Like, maybe she knew, like, oh, this dead woman got resurrected, and that's the person that I'm possessing. Or, once again, it's just the big question of what does Bo know, and when did he know it? That's the big thing, so... Because it's specifically him seeing Paling that kind of shook him. Because it could be like when he first met Zhao or whatever he knew of Zhao, she might have looked like Paling, so maybe that messed with him. But like I said, maybe he didn't connect like, wait, your dead master is this woman that's supposed to be Zhao's new body. Who knows? But when it's all said and done, initially, Jilan and Henry were thinking about you because the swords, one sword actually cleaves the soul and stores it, while the other one actually transfers the soul. So that the swords are a pair for a reason, so they kind of work in tandem with each other. The sword they have is the one that cleaves and seals the souls. So the question then becomes like, well, if these swords are so intertwined with each other, they're so in sync, we could use one to draw the harvester to us, but obviously Bo's not gonna let that, like, he's too inside of your plans to like let that happen. So, and obviously Zhao reached out to him being like, I need you to do this, I need you to use that trust that you've built up with Nikki against her. And despite everything, it's like, well, if that's what my master wants, and he doesn't question it. That's why I feel like this might be a lifelong thing. Like, she might have been his companion ever since he was a little kid, like she's always been in and out of his life like that, or maybe it's only in more recent years, more recent months, because he was already coming to San Francisco after the earthquake. It's when he arrived, because even Henry was like, oh, it's interesting you happen to show up then, and there's even a big question about like, oh, where are you from, what are your parents like what's that all about? And Bo kind of dodged a lot of those questions, because the only thing we've really gotten about Bo, it's so interesting because Nikki was like, oh, I don't know that much about you. It's like, well, truth be told is Nikki doesn't know that much about Bo either, so It is interesting because like he's managed to avoid getting any because hey, he's like a regular enough dude that like yeah, he can use Nikki's whole thing of like you are keeping stuff from me, and I think Nikki never really thinks like oh he's got some big secrets. She knows a little bit what he told her in the first episode, but even then it's like to my knowledge that's it. And the little he gave this episode, but he pivoted around it, but he's given us next to nothing since the first episode about himself, you know. So doesn't even really go into specifics about exactly where he's from. You know, even Henry's like, oh yeah, what made you decide to come here? Like, oh, you have these skills. You could be an electrician, but like you're working at like a, you know, he's like, oh, it doesn't make sense. Like, why aren't you using those skills? And he kind of danced around that as well. So, but the plan went from hey, let's draw the harvester to us to let's use this blade to remove Zhao from within Pei Ling. So now everyone gathers. It's Henry, Bo, Jilon, Pei Ling. Also, it also involves Ryan and Sebastian. So Ryan brings Sebastian on because Sebastian's been in a bad place ever since leaving the restaurant. It's been rough for him. He won't take a job for anyone else because he found something special because that place was important to him. Mei Li is important to him, and it's like this family's become a part of. And and even then he's like he didn't even show up at dinner. And I was curious where Ryan was going to stay. I knew he wouldn't hold any grudge. Well, I was worried that he might hold a grudge against his mom, but he knows like right, it's not her choice. She actually wanted to keep him. She was going to fight to keep him, but it was like Sebastian's decision ultimately to leave in order to protect the restaurant and you know help Mei Li out in the end. But for him, he just knows, like, hey, it's going to take Seb a little bit of time to kind of get past all of this. So, but he saw how Seb was kind of drowning in his sorrows right now. So it's like, right, help me with this whole thing. Let's all going to need help with this whole mystical situation. So the plan was simple enough, but Pei Ling also had her own preparation she needed to make because she knew, like, to do this, it was going to take a lot of concentration and she wanted to meditate. But with everything with Jilon, and I was once again very pessimistic. I'm like, oh, I don't think Pei Ling's going to be so forgiving. And that's what Jilon was scared of because it's like, right, there's been so much time, like, there's no way my sister could forgive me. And Nikki had a reminder, it's like, your sister isn't your mom. Your mom might have turned away from you and stuff like that, but your sister hasn't. She wants to reach out. She wants that relationship. I mean, it's like my sister won't even look at me. And even Nikki's like, wait, she did murder you. It's like, yeah, but the fact is we've been given this second chance. Like, we were brought together again she wants to believe it was for a reason for them to kind of make up. And Jilon's kind of like, right, like, you know, when they finally do get together, she's like, why would you forgive me after what I've done? And her sister's like, I can't absolve you of everything you did, but I have to take my fault in all of this too, because I did have blame in this. She's like, when our dad died, and she's like, no, you don't have to. She's like, no, I do have to apologize because, yes, it might have been an accident. Leaving you was a choice. I made that choice and I regret it. Like, who knows how different their lives could have been because Jilon was alone. Like, she lost her mom, she lost her dad, she lost her sister, and all she had for so long was that anger and that rage, you know? And she kind of festered in it. And then when, like, Pei Ling shows up, like, years later, she lashed out again and just, you know, that pain was the only thing that kind of kept her going. I've talked about this, like, this is the week of trauma and pain just because, like, I talked about, what was that I watched yesterday that kind of dealt with that? Oh, the Winchesters. And then also the fact is there's also Black Panther Wakanda Forever that kind of really dives into that very theme and topic. So that kind of obviously was a driving force for a lot of decisions Jilon had made. And so for Pei Ling, she was asking for her sister's forgiveness and that beautiful embrace of like, yeah, we are in a good spot. Speaking of Jilon, I also love that she made a Ghostbusters reference and Ryan was like, wait, you make movie references? You watch movies? It's like, yeah. Let's not forget, like, before her whole villainy thing and just all about collecting the mystical weapons, Jilon was, yeah, like, she had a tragic backstory and a complicated upbringing, but at the end of the day, she was a normal person, like, kind of a somewhat normal kid and a somewhat normal adult until, like, so she's almost like, probably like, I'm not a robot, I'm not an alien. Yes, I know what Ghostbusters is, so I can make the reference to it. And yes, I've seen the movie, you know, who knows how many of the Ghostbusters she's seen, in fact, you know? So I just thought that was just kind of a neat thing, because, like, Ryan was almost like, wow, you make movie movie references. You watch movies. That's so wild. Like, acting like she's not human or something. Understandable, because as Yilan, you're like, wow, oh, you're almost like a regular human. It's like, because she is one. It's like, oh, yeah, you know, I get so caught up in the villainy stuff. Villains can be humans too, you know? So I love that. But I really, really love the, oh, who do you suspect? I'm a sucker for those, like, oh, like, who's, because ultimately, the whole point was, like, to charge the sword draws Zhao out, and they were able to, but the problem is, in the middle of it, just like Bo wanted it to, everything went haywire, and her spirit went free. Luckily, Jilan took precautions, and it's like, right, these runes keep her in this building. But the question is like, no, she's not out here and about as a spirit. She hijacked one of our bodies. So who could it be? And it's like, oh, like, you don't know who to trust. And it's like, well, you should be trusting Bo. But it's like, I doubt she possessed Bo. So the question then goes like, well, who did she possess? And while Bo's also secretly trying to sabotage things, well, he's already done that. But even more so because he tries to destroy a Mark. But Henry, like, was like, what are you doing? That's weird. And even that, like, Henry's got his suspicions, but arguably, like, any suspicions he's had is just going to look like the ex having an issue with the boy. Because even there was one point when they went off together, I think, when it came to, like, the fuse box and stuff, and Nikki was almost had this look on her face where it's like, oh, cool, my ex and my current boyfriend are, like, going off together. Like, she had that look. She didn't say anything in the episode, but just this look across, like, Nikki's face that almost was like, oh, that's kind of weird, so... I figured there was going to be a little bit of subterfuge also thrown in there about like who actually got possessed. I'm assuming, well, I don't think Bo did it, because I think probably at the end of the day, even he didn't know who Zhao actually was in. The only person who knew was obviously Zhao herself. But yeah, it was like you never really knew who was in it. And I do love that Ryan found a means of using of the Jusan, like some of it was left, and you mixed that with... well, it was something else. I think it was they mixed it. He mixed it with something else, and in conjunction, it causes a reaction in someone's blood. He used Paling's blood because they still have some left over. So it's like, right, that chemical reaction. If we see that in anyone else's blood, that means they're possessed. So they're going down the list and stuff, and Henry's throwing out his suspicions, and I'm like, would she even possess Henry? Because maybe that would be a little too obvious. But I don't know if his compass abilities would ever protect him from the possession or not. But like I said, I figured it wasn't Bo. But then the moment it's like, oh, it's Henry, I was like, because I've seen things like this, like what it immediately made me think of was like the faculty. There's almost a little bit of like the faculty and the shining are what two properties that immediately came to my mind. Just because, especially with like the axe layer on, definitely got shining vibes. But regardless, I thought the Seb reveal was really dope, because I thought it was like, oh, that's interesting, because it wouldn't have crossed my mind to think Seb, but it made sense, because I think out of anyone there, he is like, well, no, because like Ryan would be the next, I was about to say like the least trained person, but I guess she didn't really have much of a choice on who she picked. It was just kind of like whichever body was nearby, and just ended up, because Ryan and Jilan were the closest, but she still went for Sebastian, because I guess he was the most unassuming, or maybe there's something about, which we'll talk, well, I'll go ahead and talk about it. Seb said in the aftermath of it all, that anger and that instinct, that kind of killer instinct in her, he thought he'd never feel that way again. And the fact that she made him feel that way, because there's also a part of him that's scared, because it's like, regardless of what, like, that was already in me, and I buried it. But Jilan kind of, that feeling, she brought it to the surface again, and he's scared of that reminder of, like, that I am capable of that. I know I'm capable of it. I didn't want to think about it again, but Zhao made him think about it again by, like, he's like, I was there when she was doing what she was doing. I think the feeling was there of what she was doing, but not actually being able to fully like see what she was doing, because then he would have warned them about the Bo thing, because that would have been, you know, he would have been a part of that conversation, or at least aware of that conversation. But either way, so him and Ryan are kind of, it's kind of at like, Seb's had a rough couple episodes, like losing his job, having to walk away from his dream job and everything at the restaurant that means so much to him. Plus now he's having to push Ryan aside, because it's like, I don't feel comfortable as me right now. I don't think you should be with me right now. I shouldn't be with anyone. He's kind of isolating himself even more, and I think that's just going to send him spiraling even more, sadly. So But yeah, like I said, him like having the axe was very like Shining-esque to me. But the problem is like Nikki won't hurt Seb, and for Zhao it's like your connections make you weak. Every villain makes those mistakes. People's connections. Yeah, you can try and take advantage of it, but having someone by your side who, that trust and loyalty and caring about people, it's never a weakness. It's what makes you strong. Those connections. Because Zhao saying that because all she does is manipulate and use people. She felt so cast aside, so she feels like she can only rely on herself. It's like, yeah, she's working with Bo, but Bo is just a means to an end. The moment she gets what she needs from him, she's going to cast him aside. So he just doesn't know that yet. He was even asking, like, oh, does that mean you'll leave? Like, you'll get... Because she still needs Pei Ling's body, because when the souls were, like, drawn into... It wasn't just drawn into Zhao herself. It's also in... Some of them are still in Pei Ling's body. So it's like, we need to both be together in one for all of the spirits to kind of, like... To take full advantage of all the spirits that was taken by the Harvester, so... And then having Pei Ling and Jilan stand together against Seb. Seb slash Zhao. But she's like, I know all your weaknesses. And the moment she struck Jilan's back, I was like, oh no. And like ready to like snap her neck. And Pei Ling wasn't willing to sacrifice her sister. So it's like, right, take me instead. But luckily Henry got there in time with the sword. And they like were able to cut the stream of her soul. But I'm like, that looks like part of her soul still managed to get inside of Pei Ling, because they do ultimately give the sword to Bo, because they're like, right, he says, oh, I'm gonna hide it. I'm like, oh, that's not good, because they have no like idea, or there's nothing that should make them suspect him, right? But what I think is a key factor to consider, they made a point to not show him shattering the crystal where Zhao's soul is. So I don't think that was all of her soul. I do believe some of it managed to get inside of Pei Ling, and ultimately at the end of the episode, I believe that's what was there, because I feel like if it was really that case, everyone would have seen, like, someone would have seen like that. Because she was already at the Shin residence at the time, so you would have seen it flying into her body, like people would have. But maybe that's just kind of point. But the fact is, they didn't show that. They didn't show Bo breaking the stone, because I think he's having reservations about it. Because I think, like, right, this isn't the Shifu I thought. Like, he was willing to make sacrifice. Once again, he could probably justify it because, like, right, these are spirits, these are people who are already dead. I'm making a sacrifice for the greater good. Like, we don't know what lies she's been filling his head with, or whatever, what circumstance he's coming from, what circumstance he believes she's coming from. Like, he might see her more as like, oh, she was wronged, she's the victim in this regard, and he's trying to help her. Once again, we don't know if they're directly related, like it's an ancestor descendant situation, or because once again I brought up like maybe he's a descendant of the blacksmith, considering the blacksmith is the one who made the two swords. So, and maybe there is some familial connection even then to Zhao, Part of me did wonder too, because of the stream both ways, it does make you wonder, is there some fraction of Zhao still inside of Seb that we don't know about? Maybe, maybe not, but, we'll ultimately have to wait and see how that plays out going forward. But obviously Nikki's going to immediately go like, right, we trusted the sword with Bo, but probably when they get back, Bo's going to be like, no, the sword's fine. Like, what happened? It's like, right, maybe, and it'd be like, or maybe he'll justify, be like, maybe he did smash the crystal, but he's going to hide that. But I think the truth is, he's going to be like, no, the crystal's fine, see? So her soul is still trapped. It's like, right, good. Oh, I'm sorry, Bo. I doubted you for a second there. But at the end of the day, it's probably going to be like well, no, like some fraction of her soul must have still been in there. We could still try it with the sword again. I don't know. Not unless Bo is just going to straight up disappear now that's been accomplished. So it just depends on whether or not Zhao gets to him in time before Mickey and Henry and Shilon ultimately can, all while this is going down, the other members of the Shin family have their circumstances. Obviously, Mei Li is cleaning up, as Althea kind of puts it. It's like, yeah, her sad time cleaning, just because the whole restaurant situation. Apparently, like, since Seb left, she's been avoiding the restaurant. So, but she's given strength and confidence again when she sees Jin as he's preparing, like, to be on a podcast that's like, oh, this guy likes to really push, like, candidates in a corner and stuff like that. And he has these cards that his campaign manager is telling him, like, okay, you need to say this. But then he finally just speaks from the heart. He's like, right, I'm not here to get, like, help from, like, Washington. I'm here to, like, listen to the concerns of the community here and of Chinatown and do right by them. That's all I'm trying to do, you know. And if he's speaking from the heart like that, it's exactly what makes him kind of like the best person. And obviously he's not trying to throw shade towards Anthony. It's just like even the cards were like, yeah, we just had the difference of opinion. He's just, because that's not how Jin's going to roll. That's not the man that Jin is. So of course he's not going to approach things from that perspective. But it's like, right, seeing Jin kind of be so honest and give his everything made me lean like, you know what? Even if I have to go to war, I'm going to handle this restaurant situation. I'm kind of going to take it back, kind of, you know, what that necessarily means, whether that was going to be her potentially changing the circumstances so she could bring Seb back, or I don't know. Because there was a whole thing about Carrie bringing over some examples of like, oh, like their dumplings being like, you know, in other stores and stuff, and like the cartoon caricature of herself that was she didn't really like that. So maybe that was her being like, no, I'm reining in. Like my whole thing was about having more control over this, so I'm going to rein things back in, even if I have to go to war, you know, with the company that's kind of sponsoring and being a part of all of this. So there's that. Althea was helping out Evan. Obviously, you know, the complications with the Nadia situation, and obviously Althea, you know, being, up in people's business, you know, being the fixer that she is, is like, right, things didn't work out between you and Nikki, or you and Sabine, and I just don't want you to just kind of screw the pooch on this one, you know? I ruin a good thing. So it's like, because he's not taking as much time, like, because him and Nadia are trying to find time to, like, make time for each other, and it's just like, they just have such busy schedules. But a lady came in saying she thought her ex-boyfriend was stalking her, and they look into it and they see these security cameras being put up. And I love that Althea was trying to distract the guy, but it turns, she tried to use birds, but it's like, oh, the guy's a birdie himself, being like, you know, a bird watcher. Didn't that used to have, like, being a birdie, like, didn't that used to have a different name or something? I thought it had was it lookers or something like that? I could have sworn they, like, bird watchers had, like, maybe, like, I mean, because I know it by just bird watching, but maybe it's like that, maybe that's why. Because I just think of it as a title like bird watching and not having, like, an actual, like, title like birdie or whatever. Or birder or something, I think is, like, the title for, like, people who bird watch. But I could have sworn it was something else. But maybe I'm mistaken. But obviously they find out, like, oh, these were put up by some group or whatever. But then they look into it. You know, Nadia in particular looks into it, and it turns out the security firm, this all connects back to them. They're the ones kind of doing all this, putting up the security cameras. So it kind of, it's feeding more and more into, because it's also, because of the code or whatever, or the initials they got, I forgot what they were, but it was in conjunction with, like, another law that was going to try and be passed through. And once again, it all circles back to this company, this security firm. So that's obviously an issue for another day, but it's like, it does seem like the timing is interesting, that this is all going down, like, all this is happening, and the Zhao stuff, like, whether that is a direct correlation or whether Zhao's going to take advantage of it, whether Zhao's going to be the main focus, but maybe this stuff with the security company doesn't fully take into swing until, like, closer to the end, or maybe that's an even further down the line future storyline potentially. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see where all of that ends up going. But obviously, like, ending the episode ending on that sour note of just like, right, after everything, Pei Ling being controlled by Zhao, and Zhao's kind of getting she doesn't have everything, but she's on her way to having everything she wants. And we still don't feel a grasp or know what her full plan is. So there's that. And just for Nikki, it's like she couldn't kill her Shifu when the time came. And even Jilin, who was always, obviously she hesitated killing Mia last episode given the opportunity. So obviously now where her and her sister are, no matter what the thing is, she's going to work with Nikki to do whatever it takes to save her sister. Because they don't want to go down that route of now they have a second chance with Pele. Neither one of them wants to lose it, so we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.